What's up, assholes? Welcome to my patch note review for patch 8.5. The patch notes dropped a few hours ago, and I finally have some time to sit down and properly look over them. I have seen them, which is fair. But now I can actually properly look over them. I'm going to try to quickly and briefly discuss each one, but obviously, I mean, knowing me, this video is going to be 5 hours long, but I'm going to try to be quick. So let's just jump into it. I'll just be looking at, changes to cards, like bug fixes and stuff that's usually at the bottom. I will not be talking about because I really don't care. So first we have the stratagems, or I guess neutral, but then also the neutral stratagems. Enchanted armor now gives 2 armor, in addition to the 3 boost. It definitely needed a buff. No one was playing enchanted armor. It's an interesting card, or stratagem. They are cards, but they, technically work really differently. It's an interesting one because, potentially 3 carryover. Like, if you're able to get out of round 1 without needing the stratagem, so either by actually winning without a stratagem or obviously losing regardless of stratagem. Like, if having 5 points from a tactical advantage still wouldn't have won you the round, then you may as well just put 3 points into the next round. So it's an interesting one, and with the additional 2 armor, like, you can protect like 1 unit in your hand to insane amounts. Obviously, it has to be a unit in your hand. It has to be drawn by round 1. So, And it also has to not be played round 1 if you want carryover value. But, I mean, the protection. I mean, land this on the right card, and it can be worth a lot. Ceremonial Dagger now gives 2 bleeding in addition to 3 damage. No, wait, no. Its current version is 5 bleeding, but now it does 3 damage and 2 bleeding. So again, massive buff. The card works a lot faster and can now be actually used as removal. I mean, this can kill a Revenant, and combine it with some pings, it can kill bigger stuff. So it's now better than ever. It went from 3 damage to 5 bleeding to 3 damage and 2 bleeding. So the point output is decent. And again, it's just faster. You don't need 5 turns to get value. You don't get screwed by Purify. I don't know if it'll be playable, but I will definitely consider it more. Because up until now, I have never even considered it. At least now I will at least think about it. If it can benefit my deck in any way. I mean, bleeding. I mean, having this with vampires, it could be a good strategy, but we'll see. Cursed Scroll now draws any card of your choice, and then puts a card from hand at the bottom of your deck. So very strong. Obviously, it is the stratagem that doesn't give you any actual points on the board, nor does it give you carryover, but it can be really cool for combo decks, for decks that have a lot of potential bricks. And even though, like I said, it doesn't actually give you points on the board, if you can fix a bricked card, or get rid of a bad card to draw the card that wins you round 1, like, in an indirect way, there's points in that. So it's a really powerful effect, and I think it's balanced out by the fact that it doesn't give you any point in addition. So I can definitely see some combo decks, and maybe a Lippy with all the bricks. So obvious buff, and it does make the stratagem a lot more interesting. Armory is now a location. So it went from being a special card that boosted a unit by 3 and gave it 3 armor to an artifact that boosted an ally by 6 Did I say boost by 3 or 6? But it boosted by 6. It now boosts an ally by 6 on deploy. It has resilience, as all locations do. And on order, you give the 3 armor. And this is pretty big. One thing, you know, right off the bat that people may not be thinking so much about. Having a cheap, playable artifact, it helps make Avalok Sage a bit more tempting as a tutor. It's still not good. I mean, obviously with the Neuromancy in the game, covering most of your bases. But, you know, like in a deck that has Portal, or God forbid Scenarios, you know, the other locations, the original Witcher, Way of the Witcher locations, you know, with more artifacts coming into the game that are actually playable, and luckily also fairly well balanced, Avalok Sage is becoming more and more of a potential card to actually include in your deck. And having, you know, sometimes you want to have Portal. Maybe you want to play with the new Land of 1,000 Fables. But if you're like me, then you'd like to have at least 3 targets for a tutor, just to really make sure that it doesn't brick accidentally. And, you know, having 6 provision artifacts, you know, we had the weather stick, I don't even know what it's called, Scepter of Storms. It's a 6 for 6, and it's weather, so it's actually counterable by armor, shield, whatever. This is also a 6 for 6, and a 3 armor on a resilient order effect is so powerful. Like, you can protect some serious units. And the protection is one thing. Another thing, of course, is just the straight up points. Dwarfs have several ways to turn this 3 armor into straight up 3 points. Draco Turtle, same thing. Draco Turtle with Iris actually turns this into 6 points. And as we're going to see later, Iris gets buffed in this patch. And I mean, even just for the 3 armor on resilient, basically uninteractive order effect, that's going to be relevant to a lot of decks. And I expect to see Armory. I hope it doesn't end up for some reason being OP, because I don't want this to get changed. I love this. I want it. Regis is now 12 provisions. But really, what's hurting Regis is the initiative, right? It's not his cost. It's not his power. It is worth mentioning that since getting initiative on his effect, he has gone up 1 power and gone down 1 provision. And we're now at this point where if you hit a full row with no armor, no shield, even if you don't have initiative, even if you don't get his full trigger, he can be a 12 for 12. When just hitting 9 units and having 3 base power, he can at least be a 12 for 12. I mean, that's kind of good. I mean, we do have cards in the game that are seeing play that are usually 12 for 12 with maybe some additional upside. Of course, this requires a certain length of round and a lot of setup if you want the proper effect. But, I mean, getting a big Regis, a thick Reginald, as I used to call them, it's very satisfying. And, you know, any point buffs to Regis that makes him, you know, less sad to not get the full effect, it's good. Land of 1,000 Fables is now a location. Still plays a special card from your deck. On deploy now, but, you know, immediately. But it has resilience and the order of transforming a special card in your hand into a random unit of the same provision cost from the same faction. Cool. One thing that previously to reading the patch notes I thought you could do was you could transform a Neuromancy into Regis. If you just so happen to have a nice Regis setup, you could just transform a Neuromancy. But with Regis now costing 12, it's going to be difficult. You have to do a Muzzle or a Blue Dream. But it can be done. If you want more Regises, you can do it. This is quite an interesting effect because it's one that does not translate directly into points. I mean, if you're transforming, I mean, when you put a special card in your deck, you intend for it to be played. You intend for it to provide enough points by being played. And then when you transform it into a random unit of the same cost, I mean, if you're lucky, you can expect the same value. But this is still cool in like assimilate decks, in just fun RNG heavy decks. But also, if you have special cards in your deck that can't brick, you know, maybe it's worth a shot. And like if you have Royal Decree in your deck, but you're able to draw all your golds, like all the units left in your deck are like 5 provision, 4 provision units, it could be worth it to transform that decree into a 10 provision neutral unit, as opposed to playing a 5 provision card from your deck. So there is merit to this card, and I look forward to finding significant, meaningful ways to use it. I really am. And speaking of looking forward to, for those who follow me on Twitter or are on the Discord server, this buff was leaked to me by game director Jason Slama himself on Twitter a while back. Operator provisions changed from 8 to 7. Obviously, I love Operator. He's in my intro. One of my favorite cards. Both voice lines, art, effect, the whole package. I love that card. But at 8 provisions, it was not playable. I mean, longtime viewers of this channel will know that I used to play him a lot, but I haven't played him at all for a while. But at 7 provisions, you know, we're at least one step closer, if not actually there, at a point where this is a playable card. It's just really cool. Like, you have these types of bronze engines that are gonna be beneficial to you, but they're kind of niche, so the opponent can't use them. Like, if you operate a Queen's Guard, unless your opponent is playing some self-wound stuff, that's maybe just a 4-point unit. But to you, I mean, stick in a Queen's Guard. It's pretty cool. A lot of points. And also the new Ancient Foglet, which we'll get to. Ancient Foglet being a weather-based engine. Of course, you know, for most opponents, unless weather decks become a thing, in which case, you know, this loses value. For most opponents, it's just a 4-point card. But for you, double digits, baby. Double digits. Armorer's Workshop now gives 2 armor instead of 1. So this is the one that boosts 3 adjacent units by 2 and gives them 1 armor, but now 2 armor. I mean, if you can find a use for that armor, be it just extra protection against control or actual points in like dwarf decks and such, it's a potentially a lot of value. Like, it's a 5 provision card that gives 6 points and 6 armor spread across 3 units. Not bad. Most likely won't see play though, but I wouldn't mind being wrong. Traveling Merchant power changed from 4 to 5, so this is now a 5 for 5 that... What does he do? You shuffle a card from your hand into your deck, and then you draw a card. I think that's the order, because I think you can risk drawing the same card you shuffled back. So now it's a 5 for 5 that most of the time will potentially fix your hand, like shuffle back a 4 provision card. And if you draw anything better than 4 provisions, you know, you will have improved your hand. Potentially by a lot. I mean, if you draw gold, you know. It's a cool card, but I don't think that extra power is gonna matter. There's just no room in Gwent to play 5 for 5s that like mix up your hand a little bit. There's just not. Wagenberg is now 4 provisions. I mean, this card... I mean, in Mimi armor decks... You know, there's probably a place for this. I mean, what does it even do? It gives adjacent units 1 armor. Probably at the end of your turn. And I think it's a barricade effect. Could be wrong. Armor decks really never took off. But, I mean, I'll admit, at 4 provisions, the card is more attractive. Although, not by a lot. Iris Shade, provisions 10 to 9. I mentioned this earlier in regards to Draco Turtle decks with the new armor rate. So Iris Shade is now a 5 for 9. That turns armor into points. I mean, it's not hard to get decent value from this. I mean, any deck that plays this card and has actually built their deck around acquiring a lot of armor, they will get decent value from it. It's just, outside of Draco Turtle, there's not many combos with it. Like, it's just a nice way to turn some excess armor into points, maybe. I've never really been a fan of this card. I think it's kind of bland, but I mean, buffing it does enforce armor playstyles, which I do like, so overall, good. Speaking of Iris, she does have some companions. They will now draw a card of your choice, then discard a random card, as they always did. But if you have Iris in hand, you choose which card to discard instead. So there are 2 Iris cards in the game, right? Iris Shade and Iris von Everec. Which is not a great card. It's just, what, 5 power. You give an ally 4 vitality for like 6 or 7 provisions. Not amazing. But something that is cool about this, of course, if you do have decks made for Iris Shade, and even like if you have a slot open for Vanilla Iris as well, and you consistently have one in your hand. I mean, Iris Shade is like a round finisher, so you will have her in your hand for a lot of the time. Iris's Companion certainly becomes a very playable card. If you have Iris in hand and you get to choose your discard, do I have to say more? Like, it's good. I mean, the discard package in Skellige is pretty good. So now we have a neutral card that does that, but you can draw any card you want. Combo decks are gonna love this, and I support it. Merc de Braque, power change from 4 to 5 and provisions from 8 to 7. So this used to be a 4 power 8 provision unit that damaged 2 units by 2. Now it's a 5 for 7 that does the same. I mean, it's not amazing. It's 9 points for 7 provisions. No real removal value. The points per provisions, not amazing. Sorry about the whole moving around. Like, my shoulders hurt like crazy. So not really amazing. But I mean, a double buff is very nice to see on this card. It does have uses. Bloodthirst. You know, Bear Witcher Mentors. Like any Skellige deck that wants to damage as many units as possible. Also, Revenants potentially. I mean, I don't think Revenants will ever even try to fit this card in. But, you know, that is a way to do it. It's nice to see like a buff to a dragon. I mean, that is nice. But it is the only dragon getting buffed, and it's not enough to make dragons playable, or to make Ache of Denizley playable, so whatever. major buff though. Like double buffs are rare, but usually well deserved. Right, over to monsters. Detlef's initial Blood Moon duration goes up to 2, so he now gives 2 Blood Moon, plus 1 per adjacent vampire, up to 4. Pretty good. I mean, 4 turns of Blood Moon will usually amount to 8 points, plus his base 6, 14 points. He's what, 10 provisions? And he's a removal magnet because he has a potentially high value order effect. I mean, I love this card. Like, I absolutely love Detlef. Like, everything about him. Like, the flavor, the synergy, the potential power of his order. It's, I love that card. I mean, everybody's talking about Unseen Elder. And, I mean, I get why. It's the more explosive card. But Detlef is just such a cool design. And Detlef spawning Blood Moon. I mean, what could be better? Unseen Elder power buff, 5 to 6. I mean, not much to say. The card was already playable. I mean, you know, you can discuss whether or not vampires were playable, but Unseen Elder was already, you know, auto-include in that, obviously. So, did he need a buff? I'm not sure. I can't claim that he didn't need a buff either, so you know, I'd rather try him out buffed than leave him unbuffed, and maybe we'll never know. So, you know, I don't mind this. I'll probably enjoy it more than I will unenjoy it. Unjoy? Arcaspore is now Foglet. It's a 4/4 that on Death Wish will summon copies from deck to the row. Foglet, still a 4/4, but now on Death Wish will spawn Fog on the opposite row for 3 turns. Potential 10/4. Think about that. Potential 10/4. Now, obviously, to trigger Death Wish, you need other cards. Cards that usually aren't that spectacularly statted on their own. Like Consume cards, they don't actually have very good stats, but Death Wish cards in return have amazing stats. So, and this is great, and it obviously plays right into the new Ancient Foglet, who's now a 4/6, who I believe has Veil, but that's not mentioned here, but I think they showed him having Veil on the developer update. And he will now boost stealth by the total duration of row effects on the opposite side on deploy, and whenever you apply a row effect, he will boost stealth by its duration. So, let's say you play... you open with Blood Moon. You put down a Blood Moon, 5 turns, 1 turn will pass. You'll play an Ancient Foglet with 4 turns remaining, it'll boost stealth up to 8. Next turn, maybe you play Red Riders to apply 4 turns of Frost. On the other row, another 4 points on the Ancient Foglet. Like I said, I do believe it has Veil. And, you know, 4/6 engine with Veil. Does that remind you of anything? That's right, Fallen Knight. Except this is way less explosive. Which I think is fair. I think Fallen Knight can quickly get out of hand. But, I mean, it's relatively easily countered. So, it's not really a problem. I love this, though. Quick tangent. And I'm going to really try to make it quick. I like the more weather synergy we're getting. The weather effects themselves are very uninteresting. It's just the damage by 2. You know, either this unit or that unit, or damage those 2 units by 1. Or damage 3 times by 1. They're not very interesting. But what can make them interesting are cards that use them. You know, like spawning Fog. Whatever. Having a Foglet spawn Fog. Alright, now we're talking. Having an Ancient Foglet work as an engine with row effect durations. Now we're talking. Naglfar's crew is like a sort of ancient foggart effect with frost. It's great. This is how you make weather interesting. Just by making cards around weather that use it in flavorful and cool ways. Making archetypes. It's all good. Cyclop, not restricted to melee row anymore. That is not the only thing holding him back. I mean, the extra flexibility is nice, but honestly, it's a weak card. And if Cyclops could still be playable with the melee row restriction. You know, because people would just be like, okay, I'm gonna play Cyclops in this deck. It can be worth a lot of points. Just gotta make sure to play my Death Wish units on the melee row. Like, people would make that work. The melee row restriction is not a problem. I mean, I do like that he's getting more flexible. That's restricted. Very good. But, yeah. This card will not see play. I sincerely doubt this change will make Cyclops playable, but, I mean, I would love to be proven wrong, but I don't think I will on this one. Maruna power changed from 4 to 5. Did that card need a buff? I mean, changing its power by 1 is, you know, it's not the most massive buff. But, like, it's already, I mean, it's I don't know, like, you could play around it fairly easily if you have the cards for it. But it's such a potentially powerful effect. Like, it's pretty crazy, but I mean, yeah, power to you. It's not like it has been oppressive as of late, so why not? Succubus is now a relic instead of a beast, which is kind of sad because, I mean, you know, I've been trying to make some beast decks, and Succubus was nice to have in there. Now there's no need for it, but okay. Urn of Shadows will now trigger any allied unit's Death Wish, not just bronzes. I don't think that's a massive buff. I mean, it's a buff. It's definitely a buff. And getting an additional Maruna proc, or Manticore proc, and just having it available on order, on interactive, it's good. But what's really interesting about this, faction stratagems, Rodea. Rodea can spawn an Urn of Shadows for you in any round. Guaranteed. As long as you don't have duplicates in your deck. And, you know, you'd have to cut the Archospores, you know, the thinning Archospores. But otherwise, you could probably make a very decent no duplicates Death Wish deck with Rodea for the extra Urn of Shadows. I think that can be a thing. And anything that, you know, makes more Nova decks or Shoop decks or Rodea decks playable, I'm down with. And the buff to Urn of Shadows will definitely help that. I know the Skellige stratagem is also getting a pretty significant buff. And I've already played a Shoop Rodea Skellige deck, and it's been, like, surprisingly good and fun. So, I mean, that buff is just going to help me even more. But I do like this. I don't think it's too OP. Besides, it's a stratagem. Like, either it's only available round 1, 50% of the time, or you have to play a no duplicates deck, which I think should be rewarded in a sense. So, I like it. And lastly, for monsters, Eridan, power change from 5 to 6. Eridan needed a buff. He definitely did. And it seems like we're really moving towards these big gold legendary units with passive effects. engine effects. Having their power be increased to 6 power. Which is fair. I think it's fair. Like, Alzur's Thunder being able to kill Aerodin. I mean, like, it's kind of fine if it does, because, like, he was 5 points, and he also put 4 points of... No. How much frost does he make? 1 row for 2 turns, right? So 4 points of frost. If you have dominance, the first one will proc for 3 damage. So he was already 9 to 10 points, even if he got immediately killed. A 1 point buff doesn't really change much, and it does incentivize frost stacks a little bit more. And I think it's a fair change. A fair buff, rather. But it's gonna be interesting to see, like, how all these cards being buffed to 6 strength instead of 5, how that's gonna affect the game. It's gonna be fun. Honestly, you know, for me personally, another small tangent. I'm gonna try to make it quick. I would prefer, and I know this is gonna be so difficult to do, potentially impossible, and they're never gonna do it. And you know what? Don't listen to me anyway, so it's fine. But I would love it if, like, control and removal was less about just playing one card to kill that card, and more about combining, like, order effects and cards. Like, a ping from a Redanian Archer plus an Alzur's Thunder still kills Aerodin. Alzur's Thunder plus a Revenant ping still kills Aerodin. Onslaught. Onslaught plus Stunning Blow kills Aerodin. It's still fairly cheap removal for what you're getting rid of. So, yeah. You know, just more power to death blows, more power to small order effects of 1 and 2 damage. Make them matter more, because you can combine them with bronze removal to actually kill more expensive units. I would like that. I would also like a glass of water. So I'm going to take a quick break. Obviously for you it'll be nothing. And we'll be right back with some Skellige buffs. And nerfs. Yeah. A nerf. Oh god, yes. Alright, Reckless Flurry. Instead of dealing 8 damage randomly, it now deals 3 damage randomly 3 times. So, big buff. I mean, in terms of straight up points, it's a 1 point buff, but you can divide it up, which is good. Sorry, I had to swallow something big. A big It's good. I mean, it's a lot of flexibility. And you can use your leader to gain some extra points round 1. And still have some extra points for later. And against, like, single-use leaders that don't get any additional points from the leader in round 1, it could be a massive advantage. It really could. And I have a deck in the making that uses this, and it's probably not what you think. I think I'm a little bit out of the box with this one, but it's actually it's a deck that previously could not use Reckless Flurry at all. It didn't really have a good leader for it, but now Reckless Flurry is actually very good, so look forward to that. It's pretty cool. Mask of Ouroboros, I already talked about this. It now spawns 2 crows instead of 1. So when this stratagem was released, it just drew a card and discarded a card, right? And then they added spawn a crow. Now they upped it to spawn 2 crows. I just find it funny how a card that, I mean, it was printed in the same expansion as Scenarios, but it was so undertuned, so underpowered. It's hilarious. But now, I mean, 4 points across 2 bodies. They're beasts. They're crows. Both of those things matter. And you get a draw and a discard. That's a pretty good stratagem. That's a very good stratagem. I'm a big fan. And speaking of discard, Coral goes from 5 to 6 strength. And instead of discarding and drawing, she now draws and discards, which is like the new normal for discard anyway. And she no longer requires you to discard special cards. You just discard any card, which is good because the only cards you're incentivized to discard are units. Skirmishers, Morkvarg, even like Savage Bear, Phoenix. Like, there are no special cards you want to discard. Like, come on. So, I mean, like, the card immediately is like an 8 for 8, and it's a pretty decent engine for discard decks, which obviously aren't. It's not really an archetype, but there are enough playable discards in the game to make this probably decent. Sorry, my throat is killing me. Dire Bear now has Berserk 7, affects only the opposite row. So instead of shutting off boosts on both its row and the opposite row, it's just the opposite row. I think it's a nice addition. I don't think it really changes the card. I mean, I guess it makes the card more playable. I mean, it's now more accessible to, you know, Skellige decks that do boost, which I don't really think. I don't think the fact that it affects your own row ever mattered to Skellige, but I could be wrong. And if I am, this will help. But it's neat. It's very neat. I don't think it matters. Ace's Bloodthirst is changed from 2 to 3. I would have liked a different change, like a bigger change, and I know a lot of people agree. I will agree that like Bloodthirst 3 is difficult to get. And, you know, like, Bloodthirst 3 cards in the game are really only played with Patricidal Fury. But the whole problem with Aced is his interaction with Blaze of Glory. And you can't play both. So, I mean, Bloodthirst 3 is difficult to get. This card is now a lot easier for opponents to play around. And it incentivizes ace players. Excuse me. Charming. It incentivizes ace players to maybe just go for the safer. Is it safer? Maybe it's not safer, but you know, go for Patricidal Fury instead. I don't know. I don't really care. I've been lucky to not run into this a lot. But I definitely know the pain. And I would have liked like an actual rework that prevented the interaction with Blades of Glory. But whatever. Kraken Crate now just gets a brand new effect in addition to his existing effect. You can outdamage a unit by 1 every other turn. So Onslaught is no longer a leader ability, it's just one of Kraken Crate's abilities. I mean, it's a decent effect to slap on a card that is already decent. I mean, the problem with Crack probably isn't Crack. It's pirates and ships. And Crack just got better. It's great. Armor up. Provisions changed from 5 to 4. I think Armor up was already decent at 5. It's only 5 points, but it sets up potentially 4. I mean, at least 3, but potentially 4 damaged units on the board for Mentors and Arnagod. If you're going the Witcher Swarm route with Vesemir Mentor instead, it spawns a lot of units. But as for provisions, I think the card is very playable. Very playable. In decks that can benefit from it. Obviously, you gotta go with like full Mentor. Like 2 Mentors, Location, and Giant Boar, and Arna God. Just boom. But, you know, it's like a 5-for-4 card that can just add 3 points to a lot of your cards. So, or 4 points even, up to 4 points. Like 3 to 4 points? Come on. Scoia'tael Totem is now a location and has resilience. I don't think this changes the card at all. It's a nice flavor. I like that. And I'm sure there are some good uses for the carryover order effect. But really, you want to use it with the fanatics. So I don't see it being used as a location. There could be niche situations, but I don't think this matters. It's cool though, but I don't think it matters. Bear Witcher Quartermaster now has Zeal. So one of my favorite cards from Way of the Witcher. Also the one I got to reveal. Pretty big buff. I mean, it's not a super safe card to play. Like, even outside of Queensguard, like, just play this. And with either armor or self-wound synergies, just immediately using his charges, you know, getting the 6 points plus whatever your synergy gains you, it's pretty legit. It's a pretty legit card. You love to see it. And obviously it's just a buff to Queensguard, which you also love to see. Terra Crew Plunderer, power change from 2 to 3. The same with the Axe Wielder. These are good changes because I think these cards were actually not that far from being playable. Are they amazing now? Far from it. But them both getting these 1 power buffs, it matters. It definitely matters. I guess you can even throw in the Hound Snout. Provisions from 9 to 8. Because Hound Snout has synergy with Axe Wielder. And his pals have synergy with Plunderer. So Self-Wound, it definitely got a hell of a lot of buffs. And that is good, because that's an archetype that needs the buffs. So I'm glad to see it. I really am. Not much to say. Like, I like it. I'm happy to see it. I don't think any of these are going to be super impactful at all. But it's nice. It is nice. Alright, Northern Realms. Pincer Maneuver now has 2 charges of drawing an NR card of your choice and shuffling a card from your hand back into the deck. Instead of boosting it by 5, it now spawns a volunteer, you know, for every charge. So, in terms of direct points, it's 1 less point. But you are spawning 2 volunteers, which, you know, helps with Swarm. If you're already playing like Frigate and you're gonna use Voimir on the volunteers, that's an extra 2 points from your leader. And just the hand fixing, it's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. I think there is a deck for this now. Obviously, like, there was a deck for it. Archgriffin. Like, I think it, like, there's a no meme deck. Not a powerful one, although I could be wrong. Like, I tend to undervalue things like this. But, like, definitely a deck for this. King Foltest Soldier tag. It's good. He can now crew. Power from 7 to 6, but provisions from 12 to 11, and he's now a Temerian Drummer. In addition to his effect, so it's just good. I mean, he's now an engine, you know, just on the board in addition to, you know, spawning the copies. He can now provide the boosts himself for copying with his own ability. It's all good. He's cheaper. I don't think the power reduction is going to matter too much. You know, if he dies at 6 in today's Gwent, he would have died at 7. Queen Meave is also a soldier. And she got a massive buff. Massive. Like, when the counter reaches 0, it will not reset, first of all. You know, it used to be, you know, counter 3. When it goes to 0, you boost all your units. But now you can play it earlier. And do it multiple times. Of course, the first few times won't be as strong, but it's still points. It's still a lot of points. And whenever you boost her, she does gain 1 armor. So she's like, what, 7 points, 2 armor. And she needs to be inspired, so boost it to reduce the counter. So you boost her, and she goes up to 3 armor. And her counter goes down by 1. Next turn, if the opponent did remove her boost, you boost her, gain an armor. It's a sturdy ass card. It is a sturdy ass card. Still gets heat waved. And Curse of Corruption. And just the whole thing. Poor fucking infantry. Power from 1 to 3. And it now spawns left flanking infantry and right flanking infantry. Which are both just 1 strength tokens. Bonded boosts health by 3. So the Caravan Vanguard decks are back. But fucking better than ever. Better than ever. I mean, what were the Vanguards? 6 provisions? Spawning 2 units? The first one's worth 6 points, and now they're worth 9? Well, this is 4 provisions. Spawns 3 units. The first one is worth 5. The next one's worth 8. So, yeah, 1 point less. Both unbonded and bonded. But 2 provisions less. And an additional unit. Like, if you enjoyed those types of decks, and you know, this works really well with Meave. Quick and easy swarming. But if you like those decks, oh baby, they're back. Lyrian Arbalest, power change from 3 to 4. Does this make the card playable? No. This is a buff that should have happened like over a year ago. Like so long ago. Jesus Christ. I mean, we are at the point now where this buff is no longer relevant. But Siege Tower, Vitality and Boost increased to 4. So now it plays for 8. If it's crewed, it's an immediate 8. Which is good. Like, that is good. 8 for 5. And if you have 2 adjacent soldiers, it's a guaranteed 8 for 5. I mean, we all know how that good that is. Like, Bear Witcher is mostly played for that. The Siege Tower is actually kind of legit. It's not an interesting effect at all. At all. It's a good card. Inspired Zeal is back to boosting by 2. I mean, this happened. This has happened before, but it was a while ago, and the game has increased in overall power level. So maybe the game is now ready for this boost, this buff. But we sure as hell weren't ready the first time. But a lot has changed, as I said. We may be ready for this now. Is Inspired Seal still just the Blue Stripes Commandos leader? Yes. But, you know, it's not worth a total of 6 points. More with like a Seltkirk. Like maybe. It's still just going to be used with commandos, but sure, whatever. Scoia'tael, Invigorate. Ability change to boost 5 units in your hand by 1. 2 charges. Massive buff. People have been asking for this, suggesting this exact change so many times. I still don't think it makes the leader particularly good, but it is playable now. It is playable because you can actually have special cards in your deck, and you're not as incredibly susceptible to being bled. So it's a massive buff. Like such a big buff. I don't think it makes the leader particularly relevant, but it's a huge step in the right direction. Great Oak is back to 8 power. It used to be 8, got nerfed to 7. This is quite a while ago. The card was auto-include. It was pretty OP. But the game has drastically increased its power level since then. So Oak going back to 8. 8 is great. Honestly, I don't think it's enough to really make the card relevant again. Like, it's better. But it saw no play at 7. And I don't think it's going to see a lot of play at 8. People will try it. But, I don't know. Maybe. Scoia'tael Neophyte still does the same thing, but it now on order will transform an allied elf into Elven Deadeye. So this is a buff to never played card, but also the stratagem that spawns and plays a Neophyte. So it's 4 points, 2 elves. But you can now transform, like one of them transforms the other one into a Deadeye, which is a 3 strength unit. So at least 5 points. You know, Deadeyes have synergies with Vernociel. And if you have other elves to transform, like if you play Elven... No, Dolbothana Bomber? Is that what it's called? Maybe. Or like, if you have an elf that is damaged to like 1 or 2 strength, you can gain some points by doing this. So it's a cool buff. I was really wondering how they would buff Neophyte, if ever. Without making like the stratagem busted. Because it's difficult when like a stratagem just straight up spawns and plays a card. But I think this is a very, very cool way to do it. And I think it's going to work. I like it. Minra Braze. Instead of transforming 2 rowdy dwarfs into dwarf berserkers on deploy, he now does it on order with 2 charges and zeal. It makes it more flexible. I don't think this is a game changer at all. Last time I had like a dwarf phase and I played a lot of dwarves, I didn't really have any issues using Minra Braze the way he is. So I don't really know. I don't really know. I mean, you can still use him the exact same way. It's just he now has more flexibility. So it is a buff. It's nice to see. But I don't think it's a game changer. Bryhead Vanguard, power change from 1 to 2. I think that's fair. I mean, that card has been in its current state for a long time. Like forever. And it's a card that incentivizes full-on elf decks as opposed to these stupid hybrids with the cat witchers and traps and whatever. So I like it. It encourages tribal play, which I am very much in favor of. Cat Witcher Adept is now 4 power. You're never going to play it. The problem with this card was not its base power. Although it helps. Of course it helps. But, I mean, what are you going to do? First play a lot of units, and then give a unit a lot of vitality? Or wait for your opponent to row stack a lot, and then give a lot of bleeding? No. No. Like, for 4 provisions, like, you get better cards, better engines. Right, Nilfgaard. Morvan Voorhees is now 7 power. A buff to tactical decision. A leader I'm still very unsure of how I feel about. Just in terms of, do I think it's actually playable? But spawning, I mean, you know what? I think it is. Like, he's a soldier. It triggers assimilate. He's 7 power. And you can fix your hand a lot. I think you have to build your deck in a smart way, just to make sure that that hand fixing really matters. In a way that can more or less be translated into points. But 7 strength, triggers assimilate, is a soldier, has a deploy, you know, Nausicaa Sergeant. I don't think it's a lot more playable at 7 than it was at 6. I just realized that maybe I've undervalued this a little bit. But at 7, that's definitely nice. Lockdown provisions from 13 to 14, still going to be trash. The new lockdown is interesting. Like, I want to see it be playable just to see how it actually functions. Because it's a lot cooler and a lot more interesting than it used to be. So I look forward to the day when it's playable. But 14 provisions ain't gonna cut it. I appreciate the baby steps, but I think we've had our break from lockdown. And this version of lockdown is never gonna be as oppressive, so I think it's safe to, like, give it more significant buffs from now on, just to make it playable for once. Imperial Formation now has an additional line of text. Whenever you play a soldier, give it 1 armor for each adjacent soldier. A lot of potential in this one. A lot of potential. Like, soldier decks, you know, like we're thinking Archfiend Crossbowman, right? Which relies on Barricade. But also, like, Alba Pikeman. If you can, you know, play an Alba Pikeman with 2 armor, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. You can maybe, like, by playing Ramon, you automatically have 1 soldier. So whatever you play next to him will gain, like, 3 to 4 armor. And, you know, Damien de la Tour is a soldier. Of course, this is not a leader you really want to refresh with Damien, so there's kind of that anti-synergy there. Sorry, Damien. But it's fun. Stefan Skellen. This is probably a buff people wouldn't really expect me to be excited about. But I kind of am. Because I love Nova decks. Siri Nova decks. And one of my favorite is actually Enslave 6. Just very wholesome, just tactics all the way. And there is this 9 provision slot. Actually, there's 2. But there's one in particular where people tend to play Kahir. But I strongly disagree with that card's existence. So having Stefan Skellen to play instead, it's nice. I'm definitely putting that in, and that seems fun. I'm down for that. Reamed and Righef both getting buffs. Reamed going down to 6 provisions. Righef going up to 4 power. You know, again, trying to buff soldier decks. The thing about these 2 cards, they both really only work, or are worth even including, for Slave Infantry and Darelands. Darelands just feel weak in Slave Infantry. I don't really feel has enough support. Both of these buffs help because they make sure that, you know, even if you're not as successful with the Darelands or the Slave Infantries, these cards have a greater chance of still being worth it. I mean, Reamed at 6 provisions, 4 power. Like, if you can hit 3 copies of a soldier, he's a 10 for 6. Which is good. And that's with 3 copies. Which should be very easy. So, Reamed is really good. Righef, less so. I mean, what does he cost? 8? I think he costs 8. That's expensive. I mean, I like the idea of having 2 Alba Spearmen. The ones that do 1 damage plus an additional damage for each adjacent soldiers. So you have 2 of those next to each other. And with soldiers on their flanks. And then you play Righef and you deal 6 damage. So he'll be like a 4 deal 6 for 8. Which is like, that's cool. But that requires you to play 2 4 provision cards. That aren't spectacular. But it's cool. Like, it's nice to see this archetype definitely getting buffs, like significant buffs. Because it is a direction a lot of people, including myself, want Nilfgaard to go. So, I mean, good. Vivian is now 4 power. What does she cost? 9? Is she 9? I think she costs 9. This is interesting. This is a card that I feel is potentially quite close to being playable. So this could actually matter. We'll see. I have no experience with the card, so I can't really say that much about it. But this could matter, actually. We'll see. Masquerade Ball will not only progress for aristocrats played on your side of the ball. So no Joachim, no Roderick. A lot of people think this is the end of the world, and I can just tell you right now, I do not think this change will affect Masquerade Ball's play rate that much. I could be wrong, and I sincerely hope I am. I hope this just really kicks Masquerade Ball right in the Masquerade Balls, and it actually takes a backseat, at least for 1 season. Give us 1 season without this shit. But it definitely now forces people to play more, cards that are more intended to actually work with the card, and not just consistency god Roderick and point slam god Joachim. I actually have to play some clever cards. I mean, they find a way around it. Like, Nilfgaard players always find a way around being clever. I'm just kidding. I really am just kidding. Emir now basically has the same effect, except he doesn't seize a random 1 power enemy unit with spying. You get to choose, and it's an order instead of a passive. But it does have zeal. And the devotion now only refreshes the order. So you actually get to do it once, even without devotion. Why you would play even this version of the card without devotion, I will never know. I truly won't. So this doesn't really matter, the specific wording. But I mean, the main takeaway is the same, except you get to choose the unit. So you can actually set up, like with Enforcer pings, you can set up seizes that you want. So it's a buff. Cool buff. Combat Engineer is now a soldier, and he's now 4 strength. I mean, if you have an artifact, he plays for 7. 7 for 4. And you can play Armory, which has resilience, so that ensures that you have an artifact for 2 rounds. I mean, like no meme. 7 for 4, man. 7 for 4. Toussaint Knight Errant is now 3 strength. That's the guy that deals 2 damage to an enemy unit. But if it has 6 or more power, it deals 4 damage. So, potential 7 for 4 again. Should be easy to trigger. I mean, 6 or higher is not that unusual at all. So, but why you would play this, I don't know. I mean, you have Magnet Division, you have Nausicaa Sergeant, even just Tourney Joust, so many more attractive 4 provision cards. I mean, if you're going for a full Knight deck, and you can't play those pesky soldiers, maybe. And Rico Meyersdorf will now also change his power when he's in the deck. You know, previously, he only changed his power when he was in your hand, so you couldn't tutor him after your opponent played a big card. Now he can be a really tricky one. He can surprise a lot of people now. So, I mean, maybe. He's only 6 provisions. And, you know, with the way he works now, like, he could potentially... Yeah, like, I think he's good. I think he's good. Syndicate. Back Alley Chemist. Ability change to Zeal Order. Give an ally unit poison and gain 2 coins. Back Alley Chemist. Was that the guy that poisoned an ally unit and boosted it by 2? If so, this is a massive buff. I think that's what he did. Like, yeah, this is huge. I mean, gaining 2 coins as opposed to boosting a poisoned allied unit by 2? Yes. Yes, sure. Great. So good. Horst Berzodi now has Fee 1, given ally unit vitality for 1 turn. Ewald does the same with bleeding. I mean, like, it's 1-for-1 spending on cards that are, for the most part, intended to do something else. It's just like incidental spenders, which is good. It's good. Will they see play? Probably not. Salamander Mage is now a mage. I mean, Reddit has joked enough about this. I'm not going to do it. But it's just nice to see flavorful tags in the game. It is. Roland Blenheim. Tooltip now correctly specifies that a unit needs to gain poison in order to get coins. So you can't do that trick where you just poison a veiled unit, and you go for like an infinite loop with the Blenheim brothers. That's good. I mean, this is fair. The unit needs to gain poison, although you can't do it on veiled units anymore at all. That seems weird. Oh no, wait, he's the guy. The other one is the guy that gives poison and boosts by 2. This is the guy that gains coins when a unit is poisoned. Okay. That's fair. I like that. Cleaver lost his 2 armor. Easier to kill. Good. Very good. Dies to Uncrate Longship. I kind of don't like that. But, I mean, if you're playing Cleaver, if you're playing Crimes, you queue up against Skellige. You have removal. Like, you can deal. I think it's fine. You can deal. Horson Jr. This one. He now has Insanity by default, which makes sense. He'll now damage a boosted enemy unit by 6. And gain a coin for every point of excess damage dealt. Same as before. Devotion. Remove the boosted requirement. Such a good devotion card. Such a strong removal card in devotion. And, you know, Fee 3. Destroy an enemy unit with 3 power or less. I mean, this guy alone. And, you know, without even needing coins, can kill anything at 9 strength or lower. Yes. Holy shit. Yes. Give me that Horson Jr. Give me those... Devotion. Give me those Devotion Syndicate decks, you son of a bitch. Yes. Safecracker, removed Intimidate. Power change from 3 to 4. This is good. I mean, this... Safecracker gaining Intimidate. That was a change that was a buff that was given to it when crimes were bad. And it's like, okay, this is a cool buff. It incentivizes people to actually play crimes. Oh. We don't need that anymore. We really don't. The goddamn air purifier has been on all video. And I've recorded for way longer than I hoped that I would. But yeah, it no longer needed this super explosive card. Those line pockets openers were disgusting. I'm glad they're gonna be gone. It's still a good card. I mean, I tried recording a video yesterday and I queued up against 2 line pockets in a row. Their first Safecracker boosted by 6 in both matches. And in this case, that would be a 10 for 5. And then they Nilfgaard Injustice for 1. That boosted for 5. Which would have been a 9 for 5. Like, they're good. They're good point slammy cards. But they're also kind of, counterproductive because, if you're playing Intimidate, you want to establish engines, and then you want to play crimes. Not point slam, then establish engines, and then play crimes. Although the engines only care about the turns you play crimes. So, I mean, it works. I think they're good. I mean, they're Venendal elites for crimes. Sadly, Venendal Elite is not as playable as we want it to be. But crime decks are pretty strong. So maybe these will still see play. We'll see. Damnation goes down to 7 provisions. I mean, that card is so hard to set up. It's a cool card. And I've tried utilizing it before to very little success. But a buff is a buff. It's nice to see. Greater Brothers gains an armor. I mean, a buff is a buff. It's not really the most playable card. But, like, honestly, with Horson Jr. being this, I've been thinking about just like a mid-range point slam Devotion Syndicate. And, Greater Brothers, maybe. Just as a Syndicate Skel. Just point slam. Good work. Professor now does 4 damage. Now we're entering territory where his damage actually matters. Could be good. Of course, he has his tribute to ignore armor. Could be good. Quite a few bronze engines will get fucked by the Professor. Which is fine. This could be a very powerful card. I mean, applying bounty and then dealing 4 damage? It could work. Pirate's Cove, instead of you gaining 4 coins and spawning a Sea Jackal, it now spawns a Sea Jackal 2 times. 2 chargers. I like that. I mean, we don't need more Syndicate leaders that spend. Fuck, that was exactly the opposite of what I meant to say. We don't need more Syndicate leaders that gain coins. We need Syndicate leaders that spend. I'm tired. I legit like this. Like, just your leader providing you with, at least 8 points of value, right? Spread across 2 charges. It can provide you with a spender in 2 rounds, 2 separate rounds. And if you're actively triggering the Horde on it, you'll get more than 8 points of value from this. Great. Will it see play? No. Do I hope I'm wrong? Yes. Boris, power change from 3 to 5. There's now 8 provisions. 5 strength, does 3 damage, death blow, gain 3 coins, potentially 11 points. For 8 provisions. Will it see play? I mean, we have already seen some buffs that would strengthen bounty decks. And I can actually see this being played in bounty decks. But unless bounty decks see a resurgence, I don't think so. Here we go. Firesworn. Grand Inquisitor Helvete. 6 power. So he's now at 10 for 10. Yes. Keeper of the Flame. I mean, I don't need to say more. Like, it was already a good card. But now it's just better. Keeper of the Flame now has his tribute reduced by 1 for every allied cleric. I don't know how many of the Firesworn cards are actually clerics. But it's nice to see some cleric synergy. It's cool. It's random and out of nowhere, but it's cool. It's very cool. I mean, let's not forget, I mean, Tribute 4 for a lot of points. Play off the books, it's Tribute 3. I have some clerics. It's a very cheap tribute for a whole row of boosts. Sacred Flame now has Firesworn category. Why does this matter, you ask? Because round 3, Jacques the Grandmaster previously didn't gain a coin when you played Sacred Flame. Now he does. It's great. I mean, it's like I mentioned way earlier about, oh, category flavor. I like that, and I do. And I appreciate the category flavor here. But this is actually a buff. This category change is actually a buff. And the stratagem now gives 5 coins. Again, Rodea decks having access to like just 5 coins straight up. On order, uninteractive, whenever you need it. Maybe. Maybe. We'll see. And that is it. That is it for all the patch notes for patch 8.5. The timer that shows how long I've been recording is hidden behind my face cam, so I luckily don't have to look at it, because I fear that it's really, really high. I mean, there were quite a few changes, and I figured the people who are going to watch me talk about a patch and patch notes are going to be the people who just enjoy listening to me talk. So why not give them a little bit extra, huh? And also, like, if I'm going to make a video where I just talk about patch notes, I mean, like, I don't want to just read the patch notes, because you can read them yourselves in, like, 2 minutes. You know, I really want to delve into, like, all my thoughts regarding all the changes, what I like, what I don't like, the implications that I think it might have, like ideas that I have based on the changes. And I hope I did a good job of that. I had a good time talking about these changes. I haven't done a lot of patch note reviews. I've done some. Definitely not as extensive or long as this one. But, I mean, if it hadn't been for this, like, you wouldn't have gotten any videos today. So, I mean, for those of you who do enjoy this and did watch this, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, I'm glad to at least have been able to give you this. And tomorrow, I mean, I guess I can't make promises because things can go wrong. But I am going to try to record. I'm going to try to make a video. I haven't decided on a deck. Are there any decks that you want to see? Preferably ones using some of the changed cards. Just do let me know. I have some ideas, but they're not finished. I don't think I can get them finished by tomorrow, so I don't know what I'll do. But we'll see. We'll see. And until we do see, have a good one. How does my intro go again? I don't know. I hope to see you again soon. Bye. Thanks for watching. That's not how it goes, but that's how I did it. I'm a free man. It's a free world. I can do whatever the fuck I want.